It always begins quietly. For some, it's the late-night silence when the world has gone to sleep and the weight of life presses hardest. For others, it's the morning drive to work, staring at the red lights, wondering, is this really all there is for me? Maybe you've felt it too, that tug deep inside. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet whisper. There's more in you than this. I once knew a man named Daniel. He wasn't a failure, not by any stretch. He had a decent job, a family who loved him, and the comfort of routine. But comfort is a tricky thing. It can numb you into forgetting who you are meant to become. Every morning, Daniel drove the same road, passed the same stores, nodded at the same doorman, sat at the same desk. Day after day, the same script played out. Yet inside, a restlessness grew. He wasn't sure what it meant, but he knew he was drifting, reacting to life instead of steering it. One evening, after another long day of checking boxes but feeling empty, Daniel sat on his porch as the sun dipped behind the houses. His little girl asked him a question that struck harder than any business meeting ever had. Daddy, when I grow up, do I have to be tired all the time too? That question cut deep. Not because she meant harm, but because children see what we adults often hide. And in that moment, Daniel realized something profound. Life was slipping by, and he was letting it wasn't bad luck. It wasn't other people. It wasn't chance that it was him. That night became his turning point. The blank canvas you and I, just like Daniel, came into this world empty-handed. No titles, no reputation, no riches. Just possibility. Think of a newborn child. There's no thought of failure, no fear of rejection. A child simply exists, pure potential, a blank canvas waiting for its story. But as time moves on, the canvas doesn't stay blank. It fills with the strokes of other people's voices. Some encouraging, some discouraging, some painting lines you never asked for. And before long, you begin to mistake those strokes for who you are. That's when the battle begins. The quiet war between your true potential and your conditioning. The world tells you, be realistic. Stay safe. Don't dream too big. But something inside whispers back, you were made for more. The question is, who do you listen to? The power shifts back. Daniel's story is not unique. At some point, everyone faces this realization. The life you're living is the sum of your decisions. That may sound heavy, but here's the liberating truth. Your choices can change. The moment you turn inward with intention, the power shifts back into your hands. You stop blaming the economy, the government, the boss, the critics, even the past. You realize, if my life is to improve, I must improve. That's what Napoleon Hill meant when he said every man has the power to shape his destiny through his own thoughts, actions, and vision. You don't need to wait for permission. You don't need the world to save you. The tools have been in your hands all along. The only question is, will you use them? Not selfish. Essential. Too many people confuse focusing on themselves with selfishness. But let me tell you the truth. Focusing on yourself is not selfish. It's essential. You cannot give what you don't have. A weak man cannot lift others. An empty soul cannot inspire. A confused leader cannot guide. By building yourself first, your habits, your discipline, your character, you become a source of strength for others. Your habits are the bricks of your destiny. Your thoughts are the mortar that binds them. Your actions are the roof that shields your future. This is the foundation no one else can build for you. The craftsman of life. Picture a master carpenter. He does not strike the wood randomly, hoping something beautiful appears. No, he studies it, measures it, envisions the finished product, and only then begins to shape it with patience. Your life is no different. You are the craftsman. But are you measuring with care? Or are you letting chance carve your days? Every choice you make, how you think, how you act, how you spend your time, is another strike of the chisel. If you waste your hours on distraction, your masterpiece will show it. If you let others tell you what you should be, your canvas will reflect their strokes, not yours. But if you choose, deliberately, patiently, persistently, your life will become a work of art that reflects your true potential. The first decision. Daniel didn't change his life overnight. No one does. But that night, sitting on his porch with his daughter's innocent question echoing in his heart, he made a decision. He would no longer drift. He would no longer live half-decided, half-committed, half-alive. He would take full responsibility for his time, his energy, his growth. That was the moment he picked up his tools as the craftsman of his own destiny. And just like Daniel, your turning point will not come from someone else. It will not arrive as luck or fate. It begins the moment you decide to turn inward, to lead yourself, to focus with clarity on the person you must become. Because once you do, the world outside begins to respond. Part 1 ends here. Backhand index pointing right. Part 2 will continue Daniel's story, showing how clarity transforms confusion into direction, and why vision is the most powerful weapon you can carry. Part 2. The Farmer's Field of Belief. Daniel was only 8 when he first heard the words that would echo in his head for years. "You'll never be anything special," his uncle said with a dismissive wave. "Boys like you just don't have what it takes." At the time, Daniel didn't argue. He was a small boy from a small town, and adults' words had a way of settling into the soil of his mind like seeds. For years, he watered those seeds with self-doubt, replaying the memory until it grew into a truth he thought unshakable. I am ordinary. I am limited. I am not enough. But one summer, when Daniel was 16, something changed. He went to stay with his grandfather, a retired farmer who lived on the edge of town. The old man didn't have much in the way of money or possessions, but he had wisdom earned from years of working the land and observing life's rhythms. On Daniel's second day there, his grandfather led him to 2 small fields behind the barn. Each had been planted with the same seeds weeks earlier. But the sight shocked Daniel. One field was lush, green, and alive with crops pushing proudly toward the sun. The other was thin, brown, with plants shriveled as though they had given up. "Why does one look so healthy and the other so weak?" Daniel asked. His grandfather smiled knowingly. "Because I gave them different things to drink." He showed Daniel 2 barrels. One held clean water, the other a mixture tainted with salt and waste. "I fed this field with life," the old man explained, pointing to the flourishing crop. "And this one," he said, gesturing to the withered plants, "with poison. Same seeds, same soil, same sunshine. Only difference was what I poured in every day." Daniel stared at the dying plants. They had no choice but to absorb what they were given. His grandfather's eyes twinkled as he leaned closer. "Your mind is no different, boy. What you pour into it each day will decide whether you flourish or wither. Remember that." Those words planted a new kind of seed inside Daniel. Years passed. Daniel carried his grandfather's lesson with him like a compass. But carrying it was not the same as living it. When he entered college, Daniel found himself surrounded by voices. Professors who said competition was too fierce. Friends who warned him not to aim too high. A girlfriend who told him it was safer to take a steady job than to chase dreams. Each voice poured something into him, and though he tried to resist, he could feel himself shrinking, doubting, hesitating. One evening, as he sat alone in his dorm room, staring at a failed exam, Daniel caught himself whispering, "Maybe I'm just not smart enough. Maybe they were all right." And then, like a bolt of lightning, he remembered the fields. He saw again the dying plants that had no choice but to absorb poison. But unlike those plants, he realized, I do have a choice. I can choose what I feed myself. That night, Daniel made a quiet decision. He would guard his mind as carefully as his grandfather had guarded his crops. He began small. Each morning he wrote a single sentence on a piece of paper. I am capable of more than I know. He kept the paper in his pocket and read it whenever doubt crept in. At first, it felt foolish. But over time, something shifted. He walked with straighter shoulders. He raised his hand in class more often. He started speaking with conviction instead of hesitation. And just as his grandfather had promised, the harvest began to show. After graduation, Daniel faced a choice: take a comfortable but uninspiring job, or risk starting his own small business. The safer path whispered to him like a lullaby, promising steady paychecks and no surprises. But another voice inside, quieter but stronger, reminded him of purpose. Comfort will keep you small, it said. Purpose will make you grow. He chose the harder path. In the beginning, it was brutal. Some months, he barely had enough money to keep the lights on. Friends shook their heads, certain he was making a mistake. But Daniel kept watering his mind with belief. He read books that stretched him. He surrounded himself with mentors who challenged him. And every night, he wrote down 3 reasons why his work mattered. Slowly, results came. His business began to attract attention. Clients appreciated not just his skills, but his passion. People were drawn to the fire in him, the kind of fire that only purpose can light. One day, an old friend asked him, "How did you do it? How did you go from the kid who doubted everything to the man running his own company?" Daniel smiled, remembering the withered field. "I learned to stop poisoning my own mind," he said simply. "And I chose to live with purpose, not habit." Years later, standing on a stage before a crowd of young entrepreneurs, Daniel shared his story. He didn't speak in grand theories. Instead, he told them about his uncle's harsh words, his grandfather's fields, and the quiet decision he once made to believe in himself. "Your mind," he told them, "is your greatest field. Every thought is a seed. Every belief is water. If you feed it fear, you'll harvest failure. If you feed it faith, you'll harvest success. The choice is yours, every single day." The audience listened, not because Daniel had achieved great wealth, but because he had lived a truth they all recognized. Belief shapes destiny. He ended with a challenge. Ask yourself tonight, are you living with purpose, or just with habit? Because one will chain you to where you are, and the other will carry you to where you're meant to be. Daniel's story is not unique. It is the story of anyone who chooses to rise, bloodied but unbroken, declaring, "I am still here. I am still becoming." And so are you, because belief is the soil. Purpose is the seed. And your actions, the water you pour daily, will decide whether your life becomes a prison or a palace. Choose carefully. Feed your mind well. Live with purpose. The harvest is waiting. White heavy checkmark word count 1025. This is now a story-driven, Napoleon Hill inspired narrative, showing the principle through Daniel's journey instead of lecturing directly. Do you want me to keep this same character-driven story style for all 6 parts of your book, or would you like me to vary with fables, historical figures, and personal anecdotes across different parts? Part 3. The discipline that became freedom. When Marcus was a boy, he hated chores. Every morning, his mother would call from the kitchen. "Make your bed, Marcus. Sweep the porch. Feed the hens." And every morning, he resisted. He dragged his feet, complained, tried to hide beneath the blankets until the sun was high. "Why should I do all this?" he would mutter. "It feels like prison." His mother, patient but firm, would only say, "You'll understand one day." To Marcus, discipline felt like chains. Rules, routines, obligations, He thought they robbed him of freedom. Freedom, to him, meant sleeping late, eating what he wanted, doing only what pleased him in the moment. But years later, Marcus learned the truth in the hardest way. At 23, he moved to the city with big dreams. He wanted success, independence, and the admiration of others. For the first time in his life, he had no one telling him what to do. At first, it was intoxicating. No chores. No routines. No one to wake him in the morning. But slowly, the price of freedom revealed itself. He slept past noon. His meals were fast food. His money vanished as quickly as it came. He missed deadlines, lost jobs, and broke promises. To employers, to friends, and worst of all, to himself. The very freedom he craved became his prison. He was trapped in chaos, at the mercy of moods and impulses. His health declined. His confidence evaporated. His dreams withered, not because the world conspired against him, but because he could not rule himself. One night, sitting in his dark apartment with unpaid bills on the table, Marcus remembered his mother's words. "You'll understand one day." And finally, he did. Marcus decided to start over. He didn't know where to begin, but he knew this. The opposite of chaos is discipline. So he began with something small. He set his alarm for 6 in the morning and promised himself he would rise, no matter how much his body begged for sleep. The first week was agony. His mind screamed excuses. 5 more minutes. You deserve rest. Tomorrow will be easier. But Marcus pushed through. The second week, he added another rule. Write down 3 goals every morning. Nothing grand, sometimes just go for a run, cook a healthy meal, finish 1 chapter of a book. The third week, he built further. He cut back on distractions. Less television. Less time wasted online. More time working on his craft. And slowly, almost invisibly at first, his life began to change. He had more energy. His thoughts grew clearer. His work improved. He felt pride returning each time he honored a promise to himself. One evening, he caught his reflection in the mirror and realized something profound. The discipline I once resisted is not prison, it is freedom in disguise. Months later, Marcus faced a new test. He was offered a project that could change his career. The catch? The deadline was brutal, the workload immense. Friends told him, "Don't take it, you'll burn out." But Marcus had grown different. He accepted the challenge, built a strict schedule, and worked each day with the steadiness of a soldier. While others wasted hours, he used minutes wisely. While others surrendered to moods, he honored his plan. When the project was delivered, on time and with excellence, Marcus was rewarded with opportunities beyond what he imagined. People called him talented, but Marcus knew better. It wasn't talent. It was discipline, the quiet, consistent choices made in the shadows, long before anyone was watching. With success came another realization. Discipline alone was not enough. Marcus met men who were disciplined but negative, and their bitterness poisoned their efforts. He saw how pessimism built invisible walls around them, keeping opportunity out. So Marcus trained not only his habits, but also his outlook. He chose to search for solutions where others saw problems. He decided that setbacks were not punishments, but lessons. When storms came, he looked for the hidden seed of benefit inside them. People began to notice. They said, "Marcus, you're always so positive." But it wasn't blind cheer. It was discipline of the mind, the choice to believe in possibility even when the path was unclear. One winter, Marcus faced his hardest season yet. The economy shifted. His business faltered. Clients disappeared. He lost nearly everything he had built. For a week, despair clawed at him. He felt the old habits whisper, "Give up. Hide. Escape." But then he remembered the foggy mornings from his childhood, when he thought the sun would never rise. And yet it always did. So he rose early again, kept his routines, studied new skills, and trusted that light would return. His positivity kept him moving, and in time, opportunities came back, stronger than before. By now, Marcus was admired not just for what he achieved, but for who he had become. When young men asked him for advice, he always said the same thing. Discipline is not your enemy. It is your freedom. Guard your thoughts, because they shape your future. Never stop learning, because growth is endless. And when life shifts, as it always will, adapt with grace, for the man who bends does not break. Years later, Marcus stood on a stage, addressing a crowd. He shared his story not as a boast, but as proof of a principle. Without discipline, you are a leaf in the wind. With discipline, you become the wind's master. Without positivity, you build prisons in your own mind. With positivity, you create doors where others see walls. Without growth, you decay. With growth, you remain forever alive. Without adaptability, change destroys you. With adaptability, change becomes your greatest ally. He paused, scanning the faces in the audience. Every man here has a choice, Marcus said. You can live by impulse, or you can live by principle. You can be ruled by cravings, or you can rule yourself. Freedom is not found in doing whatever you want. It is found in mastering yourself so that you can become who you were meant to be. The crowd fell silent. Each listener felt as though Marcus were speaking directly to them, exposing their excuses, challenging their habits, calling them higher. And Marcus, once the boy who thought chores were chains, now understood the truth fully. Discipline is not the end of freedom. It is the beginning. Why heavy checkmark word count 1030. This is now a cohesive, parable style part 3. Weaving your original points into Marcus's story of transformation. Part 4. The power of faith in action. Marcus had learned the value of discipline. He had tasted the strength of positivity. He had discovered growth and the necessity of adaptation. But there was one lesson left, one invisible force that separated men who only dreamed from men who actually achieved. That force was faith. The test came when Marcus faced his greatest opportunity yet, an idea that burned in his mind like fire. For years, he had worked steadily, building a small business. But now he saw a vision beyond what he had ever attempted. A new company, one that could serve thousands, maybe millions. It was bold, risky, and far bigger than anything he had ever touched. His friends shook their heads. Impossible, they said. You don't have the money. You don't have the connections. You'll lose everything. And truthfully, Marcus himself felt the sting of doubt. At night, lying awake, he heard a whisper inside. What if they're right? What if you fail? But then he remembered something from his earliest days in the city. Back when he had nothing, not even confidence, he made a promise to himself. I will never let fear decide my future. One morning, Marcus walked into the park before sunrise. The city was still asleep, the streets silent. He sat on a bench and closed his eyes. He spoke aloud, not to the trees, not to the wind, but to himself and the force that governs all life. I will build this company. I don't yet know how, but I know it will come. I will find the way. The resources will appear. The right people will come. I believe this not because I see it, but because I choose to see it. That declaration became his turning point. It wasn't wishful thinking. It wasn't blind hope. It was faith in action, the kind of faith that Napoleon Hill spoke of, the faith that becomes a magnet, pulling unseen opportunities toward a determined mind. The very next week, Marcus met a man at a small networking event. The man was a retired entrepreneur, wealthy and experienced. Out of all the conversations in the room, The man stopped Marcus and said, "You speak differently. You sound like someone who already knows his success is certain." Marcus smiled. "That's because I do." That conversation led to mentorship, then partnership, then funding. Coincidence? No. It was the law of faith in motion. Faith creates conviction. Conviction creates action. Action attracts resources. But faith is never tested in sunshine, it is tested in storms. Months into building the new company, disaster struck. The first product launch failed. A major investor withdrew. Competitors mocked him. Even his team began to waver. One night, exhausted and discouraged, Marcus sat alone in the office. Bills piled on his desk. His phone buzzed with demands he couldn't meet. The old whispers of doubt returned. You were foolish. You aimed too high. Quit now before it gets worse. For a moment, he believed it. He thought of shutting the doors, walking away, returning to the comfort of smaller dreams. But then his eyes fell on a quote he had taped to the wall months earlier. It read, "Faith sees the invisible, believes the incredible, and receives the impossible." Marcus stood, straightened his shoulders, and repeated aloud, "This failure is not final. It is feedback. This obstacle is not here to destroy me. It is here to strengthen me. I will not surrender." He called his team the next morning and said with a fire in his voice, "We are not beaten. We will try again. We will rebuild stronger. If the first door shuts, we'll find another. If 10 doors shut, we'll carve our own." Something shifted. His team, who had nearly given up, felt his conviction and believed again. Faith, like fire, had spread. Over the next year, Marcus rebuilt. Slowly, painfully, step by step. The second launch succeeded modestly. The third grew larger. The fourth exploded beyond expectation. Investors returned. Competitors stopped laughing. The company, once on the edge of collapse, became a symbol of persistence and possibility. When reporters asked Marcus the secret of his turnaround, he said only one word: faith. Not faith as a vague feeling. Not faith as empty hope. But faith with action. Faith that worked as hard at midnight as it did at dawn. Faith that refused to surrender. Faith that turned failures into fuel. Years later, standing before a group of young entrepreneurs, Marcus shared his story. "Faith is not a luxury," he told them. "It is the foundation. Without faith, discipline becomes drudgery. Without faith, positivity sounds like a lie. Without faith, growth feels uncertain. Without faith, adaptability turns into fear. Faith is what makes you believe in a future you cannot yet see. And once you believe in it, you act as though it's already true. That action is what brings it to life." He paused, letting the words sink in. "I am not asking you to believe blindly. I am asking you to believe actively. Write your vision. Speak it daily. Act on it, even when it looks impossible. Because the moment you believe with all your heart, the world begins to rearrange itself in your favor." The room was silent. Each listener felt a spark ignite in their chest. And Marcus, once the boy who resisted chores, now the man who built his future from faith, understood this truth deeply. Success does not belong to the man who waits for proof. It belongs to the man who acts as if his dream were already real. That is the power of faith. Part 5. The Mastermind Principle. Marcus had discovered faith. It became his anchor when storms came and his compass when paths seemed uncertain. But as his company grew, Marcus learned another truth. No man achieves great success alone. The next lesson waiting for him was the power of the mastermind. It began on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Marcus was sitting in his office, staring at the numbers on the screen. Sales were growing, but so were the problems. The company was expanding faster than his ability to manage it. Departments were misaligned. Deadlines slipped. New competitors appeared daily. For the first time, Marcus felt the weight of success pressing harder than the weight of failure. "I can't keep all this together," he admitted to himself. "I can't solve every problem, fight every battle, or make every decision alone." That night, he remembered something his old mentor once told him. "One man's mind is strong, but two minds in harmony create a third mind, a force greater than either one alone." It was the mastermind principle Napoleon Hill had spoken of, the alliance of two or more people working in perfect harmony toward a definite purpose. Marcus decided to put it into practice. The next week, he gathered a small group, 5 people he respected deeply. Each one was strong where he was weak. There was Helen, the financial strategist who could see patterns in numbers like a musician hears rhythm. There was Raphael, a marketer whose words could move crowds. There was Priya, a sharp operations expert who thrived on structure. There was David, a quiet but brilliant engineer with a talent for innovation. And finally, there was Evelyn, an experienced leader who had built companies before. They were different in skills, backgrounds, and perspectives. But they shared one common bond: belief in Marcus's vision. At their first meeting, Marcus explained, "I cannot do this alone. I do not want blind followers. I want thinkers. I want challengers. I want builders. Together, we will create a mind greater than our own. Together, we will form a mastermind." At first, the group was skeptical. Each had their own way of thinking. Meetings were filled with disagreements and clashing opinions. But Marcus held them together, reminding them, "Conflict is not weakness. It is the friction that sharpens ideas. What matters is that we remain aligned on the vision." Slowly, something remarkable happened. Their conversations began to flow like electricity. One person's thoughts sparked another's. One idea completed another. It was as if an unseen intelligence hovered in the room, guiding their discussions. Problems that had seemed impossible began to unravel. Solutions appeared where none existed before. It was no longer Marcus's vision alone. It had become their vision, magnified, strengthened, unstoppable. The results were dramatic. When competitors tried to undercut their prices, Helen devised a financial model that allowed them to innovate without collapsing margins. When customers grew restless, Raphael created campaigns that not only calmed them but made them loyal fans. When operations lagged, Priya built systems that doubled efficiency. When technology stalled, David engineered breakthroughs that set new industry standards. And Evelyn, the quiet strategist, kept the team united, steering them away from distractions and toward long-term victory. Marcus often sat back in these meetings, marveling. Alone, he would have been drowning in problems. Together, they were rising on solutions. This was the mastermind principle in action, the harmony of minds creating a power greater than any individual could summon. But the greatest test came when the company faced its darkest hour. A global recession struck. Investors fled the market. Supply chains collapsed. Customers cut spending. Competitors went bankrupt one after another. Marcus's company stood on the edge of the same fate. For 3 nights, Marcus barely slept. He paced his office, haunted by the possibility that everything they built would vanish. The voice of doubt returned, whispering, "This time you won't survive." But then he called his mastermind group. They gathered around the table, weary but determined. The atmosphere was heavy. For hours, they dissected every challenge, every risk, every threat. At one point, Marcus buried his face in his hands. "It's hopeless," he muttered. "Even faith feels small against this storm." Evelyn leaned forward and said firmly, "Marcus, remember this. Storms destroy lone trees, but forests stand together." You are not alone. We are not alone. This mastermind is our forest. If we remain united, we will endure. Those words reignited Marcus's fire. The group worked day and night. Ideas flowed. Plans shifted. They cut costs with precision, pivoted products, and launched new services designed for the new economy. 6 months later, while competitors were gone, Marcus's company not only survived but emerged stronger, leaner, and more respected than ever. Years later, when Marcus spoke at conferences, people often asked him the same question. What is the secret of your success? Was it discipline? Positivity? Faith? Marcus would smile. All of those matter. But if I had to give you one truth above all, it is this: no great success is built by one man alone. The richest resource in the world is not gold, not oil, not technology. It is the human mind. And when you unite minds in harmony, you create a power that can weather any storm. He paused, letting the audience absorb the lesson. Build your mastermind. Surround yourself with those who strengthen your weaknesses and expand your vision. Protect that circle with loyalty and trust. Because when you do, you'll discover what I discovered. Together, you can achieve the impossible. As he stepped off the stage, Marcus knew something deep in his heart. The world honors the man at the front, but true greatness belongs to the team behind him. The invisible circle, the mastermind. And in that truth lay the fifth pillar of his journey. Part 6. The legacy of success. The auditorium was silent. Hundreds of young entrepreneurs, dreamers, and seekers sat before Marcus, waiting for his final words. They had listened to his story of discipline, positivity, growth, faith, and the mastermind principle. Now they leaned forward, hungry for the ultimate lesson. Marcus took a deep breath and smiled. His hair had turned silver, and lines of age marked his face, but his eyes still carried the fire of vision. My friends, he began, his voice steady. I stand here not as a man who never stumbled, but as a man who refused to stay down. And today, I will tell you the final truth that ties all my lessons together, the secret that transforms ideas into destiny. He paused, letting the silence speak. The secret is simple: applied purpose. Without purpose, discipline is slavery. Without purpose, positivity is just empty words. Without purpose, growth has no direction. Without purpose, even faith and mastermind collapse into confusion. Purpose is the fire that lights all the others. It is the one thing that keeps you moving when everything else fades. Marcus then told them the story of how it all began. Years ago, he had been a young man, working a job that drained his spirit. He had dreams, but no plan. He wanted wealth, but had no purpose beyond escaping his struggles. Then one night, he sat alone in his small apartment, staring at his reflection in the window. He asked himself the question that every man must face. Why am I here? The answer did not come at once. But over time, it grew clearer. His purpose was not just to earn money, not just to build a business. It was to create something that lifted others, something that gave value to the world. That purpose became the guiding star of his life. It gave meaning to discipline, strength to positivity, fuel to growth, depth to faith, and unity to his mastermind. And it was this purpose that transformed his struggles into stepping stones. The audience was listening with rapt attention. Marcus leaned forward, his voice passionate now. You must decide what your purpose is. It may be to create, to serve, to inspire, to build, to heal, or to innovate. But until you know why you do what you do, you will wander without direction. Purpose is the key that unlocks your power. He raised his hand and began to count on his fingers. Discipline will keep you walking. Positivity will keep you believing. Growth will keep you improving. Faith will keep you steady. The mastermind will keep you strong, but only purpose will keep you alive inside. At that moment, Marcus shared a secret he had rarely told anyone. When I faced my darkest days, when the company nearly collapsed, when debt crushed me, when betrayal cut me, I thought of quitting. I thought of giving up everything. But then I remembered my purpose. I asked myself, if I quit, who will I let down? Who will suffer because I refuse to rise? And that thought gave me courage. My purpose pulled me out when nothing else could. His eyes scanned the room. That is why I urge you, don't chase money alone. Money will come and go. Don't chase fame alone. Fame is fleeting. But chase purpose, and the rest will follow. Purpose is the treasure chest that never empties. The audience erupted in applause, but Marcus raised his hand gently for silence. One last thing, he said. Purpose is not just for you. The greatest joy in life is not what you achieve for yourself, but what you pass on to others. Success without legacy is failure in disguise. If you want true wealth, share your wisdom, inspire others, build people as much as you build profits. That is how success multiplies. He smiled softly. My journey has ended a chapter, but yours is only beginning. The torch is in your hands now. Take these principles, discipline, positivity, growth, faith, mastermind, and purpose, and write your own story. Do not waste your days waiting for the perfect moment. Begin now. Begin today. The crowd rose to their feet, applauding thunderously. Many had tears in their eyes, for they felt not just inspired, but called to action. That night, as Marcus walked off the stage for the last time, he whispered to himself, Napoleon Hill was right. What the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And what one man can achieve, many can surpass. He no longer carried the burden of proving himself. He carried the joy of knowing his story had become a seed in countless hearts. A seed that would grow into forests of success across generations. And in that moment, Marcus understood, true immortality is not in wealth or monuments, but in the lives you touch and the dreams you awaken. That was the final pillar of his journey. Call to action now, dear reader. The story turns to you. Marcus's journey is not just his, it is yours waiting to be lived. The 6 principles are now in your hands. Discipline, stay consistent. Positivity, guard your mind. Growth, keep learning. Faith, believe beyond fear. Mastermind, build your circle. Purpose, define your why. These are not theories. They are tools. Use them. Apply them. Share them. Backhand index pointing right. If Marcus's story moved you, take a moment to reflect on your own purpose. Backhand index pointing right. Comment below what principle resonated with you most. Backhand index pointing right. Share this story with someone who needs it today. Backhand index pointing right, and subscribe so you never miss the next journey that can ignite your life. Your future is waiting. The only question is, will you answer the call?